Hi, my name is Yusuf Alarb, and this is my presentation about Huntington disease. Next slide is a table of contents, so we can just skip that. This is background information. What is genetic mutation? A genetic mutation is when DNA, which is what the blueprint of our body, has an error in it, and this error could cause minor effects such as maybe you can't see as well as a normal person or hear as well, or maybe you don't have an arm. DNA in the human genome. So DNA, as I mentioned before, is a code, and this code is used to build up our body like a blueprint. This code is in every living thing. So it goes from anywhere from a plant to a dolphin to yourself. Everyone has the same type of code sequence, just all of our sequences are different. So technically, if you put in a DNA sequence of a dolphin in a human embryo, they would turn into a dolphin. Like technically. What causes genetic disorders? New genetic disorders can be passed down through parents, called hereditary, or individual cells could be affected through environment like radiation or UV light. Or, and a very important option is, cells could have an error while reproducing, causing the DNA to have errors. Here's actual Huntington's disease part of the presentation. So, how is Huntington's disease diagnosed? Huntington's disease is diagnosed by looking for a certain gene, HTT, and seeing if there's an abnormal amount in it in the DNA. Doctors, however, usually do different tests or background history, family checks to see if this disease or other diseases match. How does a person get this disorder? Is it a DNA mutation or is it inherited? So, a DNA mutation for Huntington disease is very rare. It's very rare. However, if your parents have Huntington disease, as shown in the diagram, it's very likely that you will have Huntington disease. Even if there's one mutated gene and there isn't two mutated genes, 50% of the children will be affected, shown in the diagram below. Here are some main symptoms and signs for Huntington disease mixed together. And these have been provided graciously by Mayo Clinic staff. And if you want to learn more about Huntington's disease, I suggest you go check out their website. So, movement symptoms. There's a lot of movement symptoms for Huntington disease, shown in the picture above. They can't control their limbs at some point because the brain starts deteriorating. That will be shown in another image below. But some symptoms can include involuntary jerking, muscle problems, slow or abnormal eye movement, and difficulty with speeching or swallowing. Here's what I was talking about with the brain deteriorating. This is a normal human brain, and this is the brain during Huntington disease in its final stages. Here are the gray parts are parts of the brain, and the black parts are part of the brain, and you can see it like deteriorating as well, and these getting bigger and such. So there are lots of cognitive symptoms as well. These include prioritizing or like behavioral issues such as the tendency to be outbursts and not think clearly with sexual issues or a lack of awareness of one's own behavior, and they can't process thoughts fast enough. And all these issues can combine to, for example, like if they're slow, since they can't process fast enough and they're not aware of what's happening around them, they could get hit by a car because they can't process fast enough that a car is on their way there. Here's like some psychiatric symptoms. They could be feeling sad or apathy, or they could feel insomnia, fatigue, or loss of energy. And lots of times they'll think of like suicide and they want to kill themselves, which is very upsetting. What types of treatment are there, if any, available for this disorder? So for this disorder specifically, there are no treatments for Huntington disease. There are maybe a few machines that can help make the person's life more comfortable, but there's no way to treat it or even help the person out except by in simple ways like maybe getting them a glass of water or feeding them food. There are preventions such as testing the egg or sperm through the ovaries of the male or woman to see if they have the genetic mutation in each sperm until they find a negative match. And then they would implant the sperm/egg back into the woman, and the fetus would start to grow, known also as the baby. There are other examples that you could also find up on Mayo Clinic staff, mayoclinic.com. Is there any information you feel is important or interesting about this genetic disorder? So I feel like this genetic disorder is very interesting for its symptoms and how the brain would slowly deteriorate and how it forms. But another interesting thing is that seeing a person deteriorate is very interesting. However, the chance of me personally meeting someone with Huntington's disease is low. So there's a good show called House MD, even though a show and maybe more dramatized it. The show does a very good example in finding out how the disease affects people's lives with like the beginning stage of them not being able to control their hands to them, then the last stage completely not being able to control their bodies and looking straight face and can't think well. And it was very surprising, even though that yes, of course, it is a show and it is over dramatized. It was still very interesting to see how the body movements were similar, and I suggest if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. Another thing that was very interesting is that there's something called juvenile Huntington disease, and that happens in the 18th to 20s, very early in the lifetime, and it has the same symptoms. There is medication that can control symptoms, but like this is a rare case, and if you don't catch it in time, you're still gonna have to deal with the main heavy symptoms. So it was weird to say that juvenile Huntington disease has medication, but not actual Huntington disease. Well, like the subsection. Where did I get this information from, and how did I learn it? So I usually use the internet. I use, again, mostly Mayo Clinic staff, the website mayoclinics.com, and I use some other doctors' websites. How genetic mutation can be beneficial. So to put a light on this story, genetic mutation can be beneficial, making maybe you living longer by giving you bigger lungs to breathe in. Or maybe you could have a faster metabolism, making you lose weight more. An example of this is one of the mutations was in a city in Italy. There was a mutation in a protein that moves cholesterol away from the heart artery wall, and this is very good for people who have heart attack or are prone at heart attacks, because this would lower their chances greatly. And this genetic mutation is now being trying to be made into a drug and sold as a cardioprotection. And this could save maybe hundreds of thousands of lives because a few people in Italy had a genetic mutation. So how does change connect to the genetic mutation? So change is very important. About maybe 700 or 800 years ago, we believed that people with genetic disorders were devils incarnate, and they were jerking and stuff, and they were doing this on purpose, and they were evil. Now with modern technology and medicine, we've learned that this is genetic. This is not demonic, and this isn't anything bad. It's just something went wrong in the genetic code, and this led to them not being able to control themselves. And they need us more. They need us. We need to help out. And now with modern technology, they had a lot better lives than before. And even though changes made their lives better, their still life could improve. And like I mentioned before, where we found a genetic mutation for preventing heart attacks, we could have maybe in the future, due to a genetic mutation, find something that can prevent Huntington disease, and that could benefit a lot of people who have the disease or even other genetic mutations. Maybe it's like it checks for the code, and if the code is incorrect, it would just restart and pull from the mother and father again. This would be very beneficial to people who are prone to it or have it, and could help even cancer patients, because cancer patients, if you didn't know, the individual cells are genetic mutations that have gone wrong, and now the cancer cells can't stop reproducing, and they just grow. So with this maybe new thing that they made, the cancer patients will also be better. So change can almost help everyone or hurt everyone, and this is very important to today's topic with technology. So if there's ever any change, we need to keep an eye out for it, because they could save a lot of lives. Here's my bibliography. You have Mayo Clinic staff right here about Huntington disease. Here's the link. I did use this link for the artery walls genetic mutations. However, the website went down a few days ago. I'm unsure of why, but the website cannot be found. It's a 404 error page every time you load it. Maybe by the time of you seeing this video, this error 404 sign has been fixed. But for right now, this error 404 sign has not been fixed. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something more about the Huntington disease.